Hi, I'm Bruce Marciano. Check this out. The Jesus action figure. It's billed as the coolest action figure since G.I. Joe, with posable arms to reach toward the heavens and wheels in his base for smooth gliding action. At 12.5 centimeters tall, this figure is hardly imposing. You would never guess that it represents one of the most influential figures in human history. But if you think about it, it's pretty phenomenal that I can buy a cheap little figure like this of a man that lived 2,000 years ago in a land thousands of kilometers away. In fact, if you look at how many images of Jesus can be found in popular culture today, you start to get some idea of his influence. Indeed, few figures are as widely recognized and continue to have such an influence on religion, philosophy, culture, and history. The movement that grew out of Jesus' life and his teachings, Christianity in its many forms and traditions, has more followers today than at any other time in history. And this is despite centuries of challenges such as philosophical claims of the death of God, scientific challenges over the need for God, and the search for the significance of God in everyday life. So welcome to our series, Who is Jesus? A 6-part exploration of the life and the teachings of Jesus Christ. In this series, we'll look at how Jesus helps us understand issues facing us today, such as pain and healing, how we treat each other, worry-free living, fear of the future, and the kingdom of God. Just like my little friend here, I too have had the precious privilege of representing Jesus as an actor in the Bible production, The Gospel According to Matthew.
When Jesus the Christ looked at me and said, "Follow me," I left everything and became one of his disciples. My name is Matthew.
For they will inherit the earth. This film is a cinematic interpretation of the story of Jesus as it was told by Matthew. We'll be showing scenes from this film throughout the series. This production uses only the text of the Gospel according to Matthew and recreates the people, the places, the times in which Jesus lived and taught with great attention to detail. Taking on the role of Jesus was one of the greatest challenges of my life. I literally had the job of bringing Jesus to life as best I could. I had to memorize his every word as recorded by Matthew, and as best I could experience, if you will, his joys, his love, his pain, and the toughest assignment of them all, the crucifixion. So as an actor, I was on a desperate search to discover who Jesus really, truly is. It was a journey that changed my life. And that's our challenge in this series, Who is Jesus? That's our quest, to sift through all the layers of history and culture and religious presumption and religious smog and come eye to eye, if you will, with Jesus, the real Jesus. As we look back through the stained glass representations of Jesus, his story may seem a little distant or even hard to relate to. We can begin the process of finding out about Jesus just as we would any other historical figure. The first sources to turn to are the books written about him during his time. Among credible sources, there is little doubt that a man, shall I say, fitting the description of Jesus actually did exist. He was born around 4 BC. He lived among the peasants of ancient Israel. At the time, Israel was occupied by the Roman Empire, which occupied most of the known world. And this is very surprising to many people, but completely apart from the Bible, there are many references to Jesus in ancient sources. There's the writings of the Jewish historian Josephus. There's the writings writings of Tacitus, Pliny the Younger, and also the ancient Talmud. This book, The Case for Christ, it's written by Lee Strobel, and it's just a great book because it summarizes all of this evidence, again, completely outside of the Bible, that points to the reality of Jesus. According to these reports, Jesus was a Jewish teacher. Many people believed he performed healings and other miracles. Some people believed he was the long-awaited Messiah. He was rejected by the Jewish leaders. And he was executed by crucifixion under the authority of Pontius Pilate in the reign of the Roman Caesar Tiberius. These few facts tracing the life of a poor traveling preacher in this obscure place and time may well be the foundation of the most significant story in the history of our world. It is hardly a resume that would be expected to change the world, yet change the world he did. The impact of Jesus' life and teaching in the intervening 2,000 years is undeniable. Among credible historians, there is no doubt Jesus really existed, and there is certainly a core group of facts most commentators would agree upon. It is a place to start our discovery of Jesus. So the question quickly becomes not, did Jesus exist, but who is this Jesus? When you want to discover who a person is, one of the best ways to do it is you look in a biography, a book written about that someone by a person who knew him well. In the Bible are 4 such biographies of Jesus. One was written by Matthew, one by Mark, one by Luke, one by John. They're known as the Gospels, and that word means good news, and right there is a big hint as to exactly who Jesus is.
I praise you,
These accounts
Father.
were written by some of Jesus' friends and followers in the years following his death and resurrection to tell others about him. And to this day, they provide us with the best way of discovery. According to Matthew, Jesus began his public work as a, quote, traveling preacher, end quote, at about the age of 30. He moved away from his hometown of Nazareth to live in Capernaum on the shores of Lake Galilee. Every time I see a body of water like this, my mind warmly wanders back to the scenes that we shot for the Sea of Galilee in the Gospel of Matthew. I can't tell you how exciting an education it was in who is Jesus. At the time, the area around Lake Galilee was kind of like the back blocks of Israel. It was a rural area separated from the main area of Israel around Jerusalem to the south. The lake provided transport and a healthy fishing industry for the principal town of this area, Capernaum. This is Tel Hum, identified by archaeologists as the site of the Capernaum of Jesus' time. Situated on the northwest shore of Lake Galilee, evidence suggests this town was inhabited from the 1st century BC to the 7th century AD. Jesus chose Capernaum as a kind of a home base, if you will, during his ministry. This is the reconstructed synagogue in Capernaum. While this synagogue probably dates from a couple of hundred years after Jesus, excavations have revealed a synagogue here from the time of Jesus with stone walls that were 4 feet thick. It was here that Jesus began to preach. And it was here that he began collecting his disciples who would learn from him and spread his story and his teachings beyond the region of Galilee.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind.
It's likely that these first disciples of Jesus had heard about him and perhaps even heard him preach before the moment that Jesus specifically called them to follow him. This is how Matthew tells it.
As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen.
Come follow me, and I will make you fishers of men.
At once they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him.
While the first of Jesus' disciples were fishermen from the shores of Lake Galilee, the 12 chosen by Jesus were a mixed group of men from the region of Galilee. Matthew lived in Capernaum. He was a well-educated and wealthy man. At the same time, he was very disliked. By profession, he collected taxes for the occupying Roman Empire, and that meant to his fellow Jews he was a complete and total traitor. These tax collectors of the day also charged a little extra that went right into their pockets, and this was very common knowledge. And all this added up to Matthew being a complete social outcast. And then there came the day when he was sitting in his tax collector's booth or office on the street, and his life would change forever. By responding to the challenge of who Jesus was, Matthew stepped into a life of new hope and new purpose, right alongside Jesus' other disciples.
He called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out evil spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, who is called Peter, and his brother Andrew, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions.
Do not go among the Gentiles, or enter any town of the Samaritans. Go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. As you go, preach this message. The kingdom of heaven is near.
Over the next 3 years, Matthew and the other disciples had the extraordinary privilege of working and living side by side with Jesus.
At that time I will tell
They heard him preach and how he talked with people one-on-one. They witnessed how he treated sick people, how he related to children, and how he cared for those he came into contact with. They saw the crowds of people who followed Jesus almost all the time, and they saw the fear and the jealousy of the religious leaders. They saw him die, and they were the first ones to hear stories of his return to life.
Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. All authority.
Apart from a brief mention later in the Bible and the book of the Bible that bears his name, that's all we really know of Matthew.
Christian legends suggest that Matthew continued to preach, telling the stories of Jesus among the Jews for 15 years after the death and resurrection of Jesus. After that, so the story goes, he traveled east of Israel to a region near the Caspian Sea and perhaps to Persia and even into Asia. Some historians believe Matthew died as a martyr for his faith. Others suggest that he lived to old age. Even the details of when he wrote the story of Jesus are unknown, but he probably wrote it between 50 and 60 AD. Wherever his life may have led him after he disappears from the history of the Bible, the existence of the Gospel according to Matthew is evidence of the significance of that decision. And today, the story of Jesus according to Matthew continues to be read across the world as part of the Bible.
I baptize you with water.
But even for John, the preacher who first announced that Jesus was about to arrive, the question was the same. Who is Jesus?
When John heard in prison what Christ was doing, he sent his disciples to ask him,
Are you the one who was to come? Or should we expect someone else?
Jesus replied,
Go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cured, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is preached to the poor. Blessed is the man who does not fall away on account of me.
Jesus was speaking in parables, and Matthew was careful to point this out in telling his story.
Aware of this, Jesus withdrew from that place. Many followed him, and he healed all their sick, warning them not to tell who he was.
This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. Here is my servant, whom I have chosen, the one I love, in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will proclaim justice to the nations. He will not quarrel or cry out. No one will hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will
For I
not
am
break,
gentle and
and
humble
a
in heart,
smoldering wick he will not snuff out.
and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light.
It was obviously an important question to Jesus, and he made sure his disciples had a clear understanding of who he was and is.
When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples.
Who do people say the Son of Man is?
They replied,
Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others, Jeremiah or one of the prophets.
Well, what about you? Who do you say I am?
You're the Christ, the Son of the living God.
Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah. For this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven.
In the end, the importance of this story comes down to what Jesus' life is really about and who Jesus is. That's the question we'll continue to explore all through this series, and I sure hope you'll join us for more. As for now, thank you so much, and God bless you.